it is based on my assessment of the 3 different modules that I am supposed to cover. I always observe that the curriculum that is given to you for SQL, there is a lot more that I have covered than what you will actually probably use as a business analyst or a data analyst. Right? So the last class that I probably would have taken, that may have been very heavy in terms of content for many of you, but it's always good to know some of those terminologies. Right? So do your best to um, remember some of those, right? So that in case they ask you in the interviews, you are at least ready with that. Right? But basically, if I just before I go into Power BI, ideally speaking, in a work environment for a business analyst or data analyst, they will only give you authorization to use the select command, right, which is part of the DML statement of the 4 categories. Right? Of course, we did learn many more things which are part of the TDL and the TCL, but those are good to know. No harm to that. But ideally, at your workplace, there will be a developer, who will actually be doing all that. Right? So that's it. Practice as much as you can in the select, and I believe case studies are also available for SQL. So please do your best to solve that. And one thing that I did want to mention is, at least I don't know if I mentioned this in the last class, the feedback normally, regarding the case studies is most people find the SQL case studies to be very tough, right? Let me not use the word very, let me say tough, right? Compared to Excel. The good part at least is I think from your batch, they will only evaluate you completely on the integrated case study. So the integrated case study will be given to you only after I finished the Power BI class. Okay? So till now, we finished Excel. You got 2 Excel case studies. I finished SQL last week. They released 2 SQL case studies, SQL or SQL, both are the same. Right? Then we start with Power BI. Whenever I finish Power BI, they will release the Power BI, and then I will towards in the last class I will check with them and let you know as to when they will release the integrated case study. So from an evaluation perspective, I think only from this batch, they are not going to grade you for your Excel 2 case studies or the SQL 2 case studies or the Power BI 2 case studies. Right? Your final evaluation really will happen only on the integrated case study. So which is in a way a very, I think it's a good way. At least I have seen what the Power BI questions are for the integrated case study. So I think it's a cakewalk. So that's fine. But I don't have any visibility on any of the other case studies. Right? So I also know that they are trying to work such that even after everything is complete, they are trying to come up with the video overview of the solutions for each of the case studies. Right? So whenever I finish the Power BI case studies, hopefully by then they would have created the video walkthrough of each of the case studies. Right? So whenever that is available, I will let you know. But the gist of it was, because you will be working on the SQL case study, don't be bogged down if you think the SQL case study is very tough. Right? They've made it very tough so that you put in a lot more effort and you're as experienced as a 2 or 3 year experienced person. Right? So do your best to attempt it, but I think they will give you the solution walkthrough videos after all the classes are done. Okay, good. All right, just wanted to touch that before we move. Perfect. So before I move into Power BI, right, as I mentioned in one of the, now you tell me, at least having attended the classes with me, let's do this, right? Let's try to see if we can get some answers for just 1 or 2 very basic questions. Right? Now, I am opening an Excel and let us see. Let us do this. So if I were to ask you to let's say fill in the blanks or match. Yeah. So for Excel, in the options, which option would come here? Perfect, right? It is the visualization, right? Absolutely right, because you will create a visualization like at your workplace. You will create a visualization like this, which we normally call as the dashboard. Okay, perfect, good. Right? Similarly, when we talk about SQL, what would that be? It would be data extraction, right? Good, right? So it would be data extraction. What about Power BI? Okay, so Power BI is also a visualization tool, right? Good, perfect, right? Now you may say, okay, if that's the case, why are we trying to learn two visualization tools? Right? Now the reason you are trying to use a visualization tool here is Excel is normally used when your data set is relatively small, right? And when the data or the visualization or the group or the set of people who are going to use it is within a closed group. Right? But when you go into a very large company, right, you will want a mechanism where any dashboard or visualization that you create is easily accessible without you having to email them the entire data set or the entire file. Right? So when we normally work with Excel, within the Excel, as you saw in the dashboard, we actually had a tab called called data. Data was inside, and on top of that, we built the dashboard. Right? What will happen when we go into Power BI? Yes, in Power BI as well, we will actually build a visualization where there will be charts, there will be tables. But in that case, in the Office setup, the data will not be, the data will come from some data source within the company. Right? So it will predominantly be from some kind of a database, right? And there are also chances that it can come from a SQL, Excel file also, Excel or a CSV kind of a file, right? So in terms of scale, it is very easy to publish the dashboard. So once you create a dashboard in Power BI, you will then, there is an option. I will walk you through that entire PPT today. You will publish that dashboard. Again, we will not see the published thing. It is done in the Office environment because that is a licensed version, right? And once you publish, it is just a simple URL which is shared with anyone. It can just go via an email, and when one clicks on that link, it will then open the entire dashboard file. So in that scenario, they really don't need to have access to a particular software. They don't need to have access to a data. None of that. Only that link, as long as they have been given permission to view that thing, they will be able to do it. Okay. Yeah, think of it as a hyperlink kind of a thing within Excel. Very correct, very correct. Right? So that's it. When we talk about Power BI, in simple terms, think of it as you having a collection of various services which will help you to create visually appealing graphs, and it will help you to provide interactive insights. Right? When I say interactive insights in the dashboard that we create, you will see in the days to come. Right? And when we talk about Power BI, this is a very good pictorial representation, right? In Power BI, you will take data from different data sources. You will then use this Power BI tool to create a visualization, like this, right? And then other people can also consume it when you provide them the link to that particular dashboard. Right? Now, that entire aspect of creating the link, who gets access, all that is done by the admin team, right? Our job as a data analyst will be to create a dashboard very similar to the one that you have done here in Excel. Right? Now, one additional piece that you will see here is Power BI. Of course, it helps you to connect to different data sources, but it helps you to clean the data. It helps you to model the data without affecting the underlying source. When we say model the data, we will see how we create relationships between tables. That aspect is called modeling, right? And then the kind of dashboard that we create, that is nothing but your visualization. And I spoke about publishing the dashboard. That is nothing but sharing the dashboard with your colleagues or team members, right? So in a nutshell, similar to Tableau, Power BI can very easily help you to transform your data into useful insights, and that insight could be in the form of a table or some kind of visualization. underlying source. So when it says that it will help you to model the data without affecting the underlying data source, it is exactly, if you remember, in Excel we had created the date by using 3 different columns: the year, month, and the date, right? And then I had used the function equal to year, and then I referred to the year, equal to date, then open bracket, and then I said year, comma, month, comma, day, right? And then close bracket, enter. So at that time, it had given us a visual like 31st, 31 dash, 12 dash, 2023, hypothetically. But then I had clicked on it, I did a right click, and we said format, and we changed the way the display happens, right? So instead of showing that entire thing, there was an option to say 31st dash December, right? So it could be date and just the month, or it can be the day, the month, and the year. So all that when we did, I also said the same thing. We are not transforming the backend data. We are only changing the visualization. On similar lines, here when we model the data, we will apply certain filters or certain transformations. It could be that we are trying to replace certain values in a table, or it could be we are trying to do some calculation, right? We are trying to filter something, but that is happening only in the data that has come to us. But we are not doing that in the original data source. We are not doing that. That is what it means by without affecting the underlying data source. Okay, all right, right? Perfect. So that's it. We will see the key components of Power BI. So when we say Power BI, think of it as a amalgamation of 3 aspects. One is your Power BI desktop, second is your Power BI service, then third is your Power BI mobile. Now, instead of the Power BI mobile, the way I would say, think of it as a laptop or something, any kind of a device where you can view your dashboard. Okay, so we will see how to create the dashboard in class. So, so a little more detail. This is a snapshot of a dashboard that has been created by a user, and this dashboard was created using Power BI desktop. Right? So in today's class, I will give you a walkthrough of the site from where you can download the Power BI desktop. And this Power BI desktop is a free tool which you can download, and it will be on your desktop. Right? You can install it on your local PC, and you don't have to pay anything for it. Right? So, and then once you have created your dashboard, you will want other people or other colleagues to view the dashboard or consume the details from it. In such a case, there is a second option called the Power BI service. It is a software as a service, and here once the dashboard is done, you will say publish inside the Office environment, and it will then create a published view of the report or the dashboard. And this in turn is basically a link that it will be a browser kind of link, which then goes to the user, and you can even copy that particular link, and you can share it with one of the users, and then that user can open either the link on their mobile, or they can open it on their local PC, and they don't really have to have the software installed. Right? So that's why these are the 3 elements. So 3 key aspects. One is the desktop, that is the Power BI desktop. Second is the Power BI service, and third is the mobile app or any other thing. So in our case, we will only be looking at a laptop, well, ideally speaking, then Office. Most of the times we just use the laptop to view the dashboard, and for sales people who are on the go, they may probably, if they have installed the app on the thing, then they are able to view it. Okay, so in terms of the high level process, we as a developer, we as a business analyst will create the dashboard. Now, when we say dashboard, as I said, it can be a combination of charts, right? And if there are tables, then there could be tables as well. Right? So over here, this is a map. And then these are different kinds of charts here. Similarly, once it is created, it is published. So it says the key activities that you will normally do is you will first bring the data into Power BI desktop. Right? So the data can be from multiple data sources. Right? It can be SQL Server database, it can be an Excel file, it can be a flat file, it can be anything. Right? And then once you bring the data, then you will try to create different kinds of reports or dashboards. Now, in a bit, I will explain the difference between the report and the dashboard, at least in Power BI. Right? So once you have created this view, you will publish to the Power BI service. Right? So once you publish the dashboard to the Power BI service, you will then be able to share the dashboard with others, and they can click and use it in an interactive. Right? So, and you will be able to see that when we create the dashboard in class. Okay. So again, the same thing. So the data can either be on the cloud or it can be on-prem, which is nothing but on within the company environment or on your PC, anywhere. That data is input into Power BI, and you can create the required dashboard. And then once you publish it, people can use the dashboard for making business decisions. Right? And to make it easy for you, Power BI, one is the create. How do you create? You use the Power BI desktop. Publish, you use the Power BI service or the report server. Now, this is a paid application which will be used by the admin team, right? And third, consume, you will click on the link and you can view the dashboard. Okay. The next question would be, okay, but how do I install that, right? So if I were to go to Google, and if I say Power BI desktop download, right, it will take you to a link here. Okay, and then let us say I go to the Power BI downloads Power BI. If I click on this, it will take me to this site here, right? And then there is a Power BI desktop. So you can either say download here, or you can click on advanced download option. I think if you click on the download, there's an option where if you have a Microsoft account, then you can download it. I will click on the second option. I will say advanced download option. I will click here. And at a later point, you can do the same. Similarly, when you scroll down, it will then tell you that, in the language from our point, it should be English, and it will, as long as you have basic configuration on your laptop, it should be fine. But if you click on plus and system requirements, it will give you a little more info. And after this, when I say download, it will take me to the screen. My PC is a 64-bit machine. So I will select the x68.exe application. So I will select this option. And then when you say next, it will start downloading this entire 478 MB file. So once it downloads on your PC, for example, assume that this particular file, the name of this file is PBI desktop setup underscore x64.exe. You will double click on this, and then you just follow the instructions on this screen. Keep doing next, and it will install Power BI on your PC, right? And once it is installed, I think somewhere in the step, it also gives you the option to create a desktop shortcut for the desktop. Right? So I had enabled that, and hence I have this option here called Power BI desktop. Okay. So what did we do here? We did a Google, and then I said Power BI desktop download, and then one of the links I got from Microsoft was this. So download Microsoft Power BI. I had done this, okay? And then Power BI desktop. Here, there's an option called advanced download options. I had done that. And then I selected English and said download. And then I have a 64-bit PC. So I selected this and I said next. And then you're able to do it. So you don't have to pay for anything. It will automatically do it. Okay. Are we good so far? Yeah. Online tip. I hope you are good till here, right? Okay. All right. Thank you. Then once you have downloaded, you can, then when you double click the icon, it will open the, you can ignore this last part, detailed video. They will not upload any video. I'll just walk you through the steps here. Okay. So once you have downloaded, it will be there on your desktop. Right? In today's class, we will anyway open the Power BI desktop and we will go through multiple steps. But let's quickly walk through the general task flow when working with Power BI. Right? So what do we do in Power BI, or what can you do in Power BI? Okay, you can do data preparation and cleaning. So there can be the way we had used the text manipulation functions in Excel. On similar lines, there are other options here. So you will try to clean the data. Right? You will try to prep your data. And once it is done, there can be multiple tables. You will try to create relationships between the tables. Right? So that is called modeling the data. Then in order to visualize the data, there are more than 150 types of charts that you can create, and you will charts and tables. So you will create a dashboard with some kind of a visual or a table, right? Or your summary comment. Then you will be able to analyze the data. So once you've created the data, let us say your data set or graphs will have all the data. You will then want to say, but you know what? I only want to see the data for the South region. So you will probably have some kind of a filter if you have enabled. And when you click on south, it will highlight the data only for that particular region, very similar to what you did in Excel here. So here we have a slicer where if I click on furniture, everything will change based on this particular slicer. Similarly, we can have a filter in Power BI, right? So you can do that. And then finally, deployment. Again, once it is done, this is more on the last part of the office setup. Probably towards the last class, I probably touch upon that point. But I think they will give you videos regarding many of the topics which are related to Power BI service over here. Right? So here, when they say, if you see this part here, Power BI service, because this is a licensed tool, I will not be able to give any walkthrough on this. They had mentioned that they will give some video with reference to that. But what I have also done is I have put together some reading material which you on your own can take a look at. Right? But our job as a business analyst will predominantly be to create the dashboard, and publishing you can always do it at your workplace. Okay, cool. So what can we do using the Power BI tool? When, as we mentioned, we take a look at the data flow. The key aspect to start with is transform the data. Now, when we say how do you transform the entire data, there are different things. You will get the data from a source. You will analyze, you will visualize, you will publish, and you will collaborate. Collaborate is nothing but you share it with your team members or others, and then you will be able to do the required analysis. Right? And as I had mentioned earlier, this is a free tool that you can download, and on a monthly basis, they keep updating the software time and again. Right? So they will probably have some minor tweaks, and that will come as a software update in the next month or so. Right? So you can connect to multiple different sources. You can try to transform them really well. And when we say connect the data, I will in class today show you two options. One is called the import data or the direct connect. So on how the data can be brought into Power BI. Now, once you bring the data into Power BI, you will then try to do different kinds of transformations. Right now, when I say transformations, you may want to restrict the type of tables that you bring in. You may want to restrict the type of columns that you bring in. Right? Any kind of data massaging activity, you will try to do it here. So in Office parlance, we normally say we ingest the data and then we try to transform, and that is called data wrangling as well. So that is done. And once the data is made available, we can then try to create the model relationships between the different tables. So if you see here, table 1, table 2, table 3, these are the different relationships. And if you want to override something, you can do that. So in the class, the exercises that we will do, I will also show you the concept of how to view the existing relationships between table and how to change the relationships based on your requirement. Right? So we will also see that, and we will be able to do data analysis by using DAX formula. Right? So data analysis software. So we will see the data analysis formulas. And then in terms of visualization, as I said, there are more than 150 types of visuals and tables. It is a very easy to use tool, and we will create multiple views in time to come. And finally, we will not be able to view this part in class because this is the paid Power BI service option. But when you publish the file, I will anyway show you where to click. But then after that, it will not go further. But in Office setup, once you publish, it will create a URL. And I will anyway give you some reading links regarding that towards the end of the curriculum. Right? And then you will share it with different people. You are able to be on the same call, and then you can try to have discussions regarding that. And there are some advanced concepts where I'll probably speak about that in the subsequent part. Right? So when we talk about the building blocks of Power BI, think of these 5 things. Right? One is your data set. Using data set, you can create visualizations. When we say we are creating visualization, you will either create a report or a dashboard, and within the visualization, you have tiles and canvases. So let's briefly take a look at it. Now, a data set can be a simple data set, or it can be a complex data set. Right? So the file that I have here, for example, this is an example of a data set. This just is one entire table that I have. This can be my data set for Power BI, or I can bring this data along with some other table that I have from SQL Server, and I may then join the data together and then create my data. Right? So that can be an example. So for example, when I say data in Excel and data in SQL Server, assume that the data in Excel has the employee ID, right? Employee name, and employee office location. Sorry, position here, the employee position also, right? And then it will say the office details. There may be file in SQL Server where it will have the same employee ID. It will have the salary of the employee and maybe the yearly increments that one is supposed to get. So you will be able to use Power BI to merge data between SQL Server tables and your Excel and create a common data set inside your Power BI. Right? So during the exercises that we will be doing, I will be giving you an example like that also. Right? So it is a good to know. Right? But in reality, your integrated case study Power BI, they do not have any complicated questions for you. There are two things. After the Power BI curriculum, there is a case study that will be given, like 2 case studies, which is not going to be evaluated. But last thing is the integrated case study where you will be evaluated. So at least in that integrated case study, they are not going to ask you anything about Power BI surveys or the column, how to create a column, the various tax formulas, nothing. It's all an open thing. They are just asking you to create the key performance indicators based on the data set that you have. Right? So it's a very easy Power BI case study that you have. But in reality, when they say create a dashboard, you will use the data that will be given to you, and you can create a dashboard based on what you think is important in the data set. Okay, good, right? So we spoke about data set. Then we speak about visualization. Right? Sorry, yeah. Create the dashboard. It is up to you as to how you want to create a dashboard. That is correct, Azarul. You will decide what you want to show. You will decide what you. Okay. So let me clarify that, right? In the integrated case study, are you asking about the integrated case study? Now, integrated case study may, at least I know that it is either Excel file or a CSV file. Okay, something is that, right? And from that, they have given you instructions on where to use that data from. Right? So I don't honestly remember if it is you bring the data from Excel or bring the data from SQL Server. I don't know which one it is, but I will be showing you both the options. So you will be able to do it easily, not a problem. Okay, cool, good. So I was talking about visualization. So so the visualization that you have, this is an example of a visualization, and this is an example of a dashboard that has been created, right? So it can either have charts or data or table or anything, right? So basically, in simple terms, visually it should be available. It is a collection of visualizations. So 1, 2, 3 different charts are created, and we have different visualizations. Now here in this view, in this Excel workbook, I have 2 tabs, right? One is dashboard and one is a data thing. So here, imagine if the workbook only has 1 tab or 1 page, right? In such a scenario, they call it as a dashboard. It is very similar to the car dashboard that you have. Right? When you're driving a car or a bike, you will have the speedometer, the fuel indicator, the headlight on, off kind of thing. That in a single frame, in a rectangle kind of a thing, you see the key parameters that is required for you when you're driving. Right? That single view, think of it as a single page that is visible to you. Right? So this is called as a dashboard. Right? Sometimes there will be, imagine an Excel file. I mean, when I say an Excel file, imagine an Excel workbook with multiple tabs, and there can be different graphs also. Right? So if that is the case, it is like a book having multiple pages. Right? That kind of a scenario, they call it as a report. Right? So a report can be 1 or more pages in report of 5 pages. It can be anything. Okay. So but at the workplace, many times they interchangeably use the word dashboard in the report. Right? They say, hey, can you create a dashboard with, this would mainly be from the business users. The business user will say, give me a dashboard with the sales details by region in one tab. One more tab, they'll say, give me the sales region by, sales by of all the products, right? Then they'll say third tab, sales by all the salesmen name. Right? So here you have 3 tabs. So this ideally should be called as a report, but many times they will use the term create a dashboard. Right? So don't get confused by it, but just wanted to highlight that thing, right? So in the screen, so this view is very similar to the Excel view that you have, right? A dashboard thing, right? So over here, this entire thing is called as a tile, and this entire space here is called as your canvas. Right? Canvas is basically, think of an artist, trying to paint something on their portrait. Right? And so over here, there are multiple tiles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So many tiles are there inside this entire canvas. Right? So a tile is a single visualization on a dashboard. Okay, cool. Right? So in a nutshell, the final output that you will have in Power BI will be similar to a dashboard. And here this is an example of a Power BI dashboard, and it comprises of multiple tiles or multiple visualizations. Okay, cool. Right. So again, it's just a recap. I have covered each aspect of this. Yeah, and the good part about Power BI at least is because it is a Microsoft developed product, it will always be there. Will the software or the tool will be very robust, as in when there are new updates, they will keep releasing it, and they always try to improvise the given product. So it's a very user friendly product. So before I go further, right, I just want to check if all of you have understood the concept that when we talk about Power BI, it's a visualization software. What can you do? You can use Power BI to retrieve the data, and you can transform or manipulate the data such that it can then be used for analysis. Right? So that is how I would describe it. Right? And we have seen how to install this as well. So during the week, when you have time, you can download it. Okay. Before I open Power BI, are we good with the basics of it, the theory part? Okay. Okay.
So are we not doing any cleanup on this? For example, if you have a raw data,
we will 100% do that. Yeah. So what I have showed here, Imanshi, was I just gave you an overview of what Power BI is and how it can be used in the office setup. But the entire curriculum, we will do all the steps which I mentioned, starting from connecting to SQL Server database to connecting to an Excel file, bring data from both the different sources. I'll show you how to merge the data between the two sources, and then we will learn how to transform the data. For example, transform could be we will either filter some data, we will try to clean the data where there are some data discrepancies, and then we will create the final columns which can be used in the visualization. In post that, we will then see how to finally create the dashboard. So we will certainly be doing. All right. Perfect. Good. So that's it. Now, in any office setup, right, what is very important is you should be able to understand what the data is from a business perspective, and second, you should know how to use the tool. Right? Let me go back to, and again, just a very again, it's not my prerogative to tell what you should and what you should not do, right? But there are many people who they will know the tool, they will know how it works, right? But when they are trying to apply for interviews, many people write a lot of things that they have not really done, right? And it's very easy for the interviewer to catch you if you have put things which you have not done, right? So my suggestion always is just put what you have learned, what you know, what you can do, and I would say speak about that rather than say XYZ which you have never worked on, right? So be very careful. Good. Now when I was so the reason I was trying to say this is when a candidate comes for the role, right, there are two things that we normally evaluate them for, right? We evaluate them for the tool knowledge and the techniques that they use, and second is probably their business knowledge, right? Now business knowledge is not really required. I mean, it's not an expectation for an entry level if they're not really work, so they're not really going to quiz you too much on that. But you should always know that when you are in a role for a very long time, if you are able to understand what the business is, why is someone asking for a particular analysis, how is it being used, then you start understanding the business aspect of the final output. How will it really help them? Right? So that really helps you to go up the ladder. Right? So some examples of data sets. What can a data set have? It can have some customer demographic. Right? Now, customer demographic can be customer name, customer phone number, which region are they from, right? The data set can be some kind of a sales transaction information. So for example, I have a table called TBL customer. For those of you who attended the SQL classes with me, you will remember this table called TBL order, and there were about 22 rows and we had 3 categories, right? So I have used Excel to create a pivot table out of this, and we are seeing the sum of sales for each of the categories. So in this case, it is important to know what the business aspect is. Yeah, sales, okay, but sales of what? Sales of certain categories. Why are you trying to use the categories, because you may want to see which category has maximum sales, right? Okay, fine. But then you have the profit as well. But does it mean that whichever category has maximum sales, it always has the maximum profit? That need not be true, right? There are so many of these business nuances that you will be able to identify, or you should be able to identify as you graduate in that. Good. So in this case, I had the sales order information. So in this case, there's an example of a sales transaction. So I have the order value or the order in a number, and I have the order in a value as well. Right? Similarly, I can have product details. Right? So there can be a particular product. There can be drill down a category, subcategory, product name, product ID. Right? So it keeps going into that, and then inventory information. So there can be some company which is trying to sell a particular type of a product. They have to make sure they have enough inventory. Inventory is nothing but stock, right? Are we good with the stock? Are we low on stock? Do we need to order more if the stock is low? So that entire analysis is part of the supply chain, and you can say that it is part of inventory. Then marketing. Now, whatever we are trying to do, we may want to have a marketing campaign so that the profit, overall profit increases. So these are some examples of data sets that we. Now, as a business analyst or a data analyst, what would you normally do? As I said, you will probably write a SQL query and you will try to retrieve the data. Okay? If you're using Power BI, you will try to connect to one of the data sources, right? Like a SQL Server database or some other database, or some Excel file. Then once you get the data, you will try to clean the data or manipulate the data. Now, in Excel also, we saw that we can retrieve the data. In this case, to create this dashboard, we referred to this database, this tab, and then we kept doing insert pivot table or insert chart. So we were doing that. Similarly, in Power BI as well, you will retrieve the data by pointing to the database. Then once you have the data, you will clean or manipulate the data. Then you will do exploratory data analysis. So if you remember the pivot table class, we had mentioned that when you try to summarize the information, then you are trying to do exploratory data analysis. Right? And then once you have that, then data scientists will then try to do predictive modeling. Right? If given the current information that we have, what could happen in the future? That aspect is called predictive modeling. So this is where your Python and statistics comes into play. Right? And similarly, once the model is done, deployment is nothing but the live implementation of that. So an example of a predictive model, which all of us can relate to, is your experience on Amazon, right? So when you go to Amazon, you can, the moment you try to search for a product, it will immediately give you recommendations for the other. So in the background, they have a recommendation engine model which has been implemented or which has been deployed. Okay, so just want to give you a walkthrough of that. Okay. Briefly, if you want to understand more about the competitors of Power BI. In case you want to wash your face, you can wash it. That's okay. The competitors of Power BI, as I had mentioned earlier, they used to teach Tableau in class, right? So with time, if you try to see more of the job descriptions, a lot of job openings have come up for Power BI, similar to Tableau. That's the reason in analytics labs also, they stopped teaching Tableau and they brought in the Power BI curriculum. Right? And the same happened even at my workplace also. I used to use Tableau predominantly in the past, but then the IT team, for XYZ reasons, they then brought in Power BI. For it could be due to cost arbitrage, due to the functionality that it offers, or the pricing, or so we also actually moved to Power BI. Sorry. Can you repeat the question? Yeah. So see, Tableau is a so when you say old, now Tableau was there. Tableau was more frequently used, I would put it. I don't know exactly on what date Tableau was created and on what date Power BI was created, but I would say that it was more, or Tableau was more frequently used as compared to Power BI till recently. But in the current scenario, Power BI has also gained a lot of significance, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up, when you take analytics labs or any of the your Naukri or Monster or I don't know, multiple job portals, right? When you go through the job description, the visualization, you will probably see that in the past 4 years ago or 5 years ago, there were more job descriptions where they said they need somebody with Tableau experience. Right? But when you see today, you will see that there are more job descriptions with Power BI experience. So that is what I was trying to infer here. Okay, good. Cool. And yeah, so you have Tableau, ClickView, ClickSense, etc. So there are many of these. Okay? Then from a costing aspect, again, from what I know, Power BI service is relatively less expensive compared to some of its competitors. And I have also read that if you buy the Microsoft Office product like 365 or something, then they give the Power BI service free. Okay? So normally what happens is in the Office environment, the IT team will work with all the software vendors. So they will probably they will have a requirement of what needs to be done by the business or by all the stakeholders. Okay? And then once they have that list, they will then work with each vendor. When I say vendor, for them, Tableau is a vendor. Power BI company team is another vendor. Click is another vendor, right? So all these different vendors, they will ask them to give a demo or work with them and say, these are our requirements. How well does your tool or software address these questions, right? And then once that is done, then the IT team will have various deliberations where they will see how is the costing, how is the performance, how is the user satisfaction. There are so many of these aspects, and then they will then take a call which software they really want to use in the company setup. Okay. Cool, right? So in the class today, as I in the class that we will have in total, what we will do is the data set that I have is actually from some live project, and there we will see how to get the data, how to do the data modeling. We will see how to transform the data, and finally how to create the report. Okay, so I just want to give you this brief overview before we actually started to work with Power BI. So I'll just pause here to check if anyone has any questions. I know it was a little bit of theory in Gyan, but this much theory in Gyan was important because you have to know this part, because at the end of the day, it's not about only knowing the tool, right? So I will probably say that.
I have a quick question here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Since you worked on both the platform, Power BI and Tableau, which one do you think is the more powerful tool?
At least my assessment, I think powerful is Power BI, but I used to like the visualization of Tableau better.
Okay. So like now we are learning Power BI, and in future, if we have to learn Tableau, can we is it the almost same thing? Like we can just learn by ourselves? Or?
To be honest, the tools are totally different. I will be honest. I wouldn't, but the concepts in many ways are similar, is what I would say. But again, when I say similar, how do I say, it's difficult, right?
My question is, I just want to know, do I have to take another course for Tableau, or I can just self-study and learn by myself?
Depends on what your requirement is, right? So let us say you are already working in a company and you have learned Power BI, right? So somebody who's already working on Power BI for a long time, if they are asked to learn Tableau, I think most people are good at, they would end up taking, they'll try to do their YouTube tutorials or free Udemy or free Coursera or something. At least they will get the basics of what it is. And I think based on what the requirement is, right? So if the work is core Tableau, where you really have to know the nitty-gritties of it, then I think just YouTubing or self-learning may not give you the complete picture, but the YouTubing or Google can probably certainly help you with 50% of the knowledge, is what I would say. Right? And in the corporate setup, what actually happens, Amit, is if we are transitioning from one tool to the other, right? Within the corporate setup itself, there will be internal trainings that the management will come up with, right? So there will be different levels of stakeholders, and some people will just be business users. So for business users, there are a separate set of trainings that are created. There will be people who will be core developers or core business analysts. They will have to know more, right? So there will be other set of trainings that the company does. So normally companies will create these kind of things, and it could be the trainer could either be an internal trainer or it could be an external vendor. So that's how it normally happens.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, good. Any other questions? Okay, if not, because we are at 3:02, I will pause and we'll take a quick 10-minute break. We come back, okay? And after that, I will actually show you how to first create the data set in SQL Server, right? Because without this, you cannot do any, you cannot practice anything that I will teach in class, okay? And this is probably the only reason why, probably when you are instructing, I think the SQL classes when we were having, I think there was a video where it showed you how to install SQL Server on your PC, right? And they would have installed SQL Server 2009 Express edition, right? So the recent version is something where you will be able to use a feature called restore database. I will even anyway explain after the break, but yeah, we will see how to create the data set, and then we will then jump into Power. Okay, all right, we come back at 3:13 and we go from. Thank you. And if anyone else has a question and you want me to answer, I'll stay back and answer. Otherwise, I can take it at the end of the class. Thanks. Bye. And good. All right. Good. So. Sorry, online team, I'm just getting a question here. I'll listen to the question and I'll repeat the question also when it's completed. Sorry, yeah. Can you please repeat the question? Go ahead. So when you say with ChatGPT, it's like you should know how to use ChatGPT. Is that the point you're making? Yeah. So now when you say how to use ChatGPT, I mean, at least the way I see it and the way I used it last time, it's about asking the right questions and it will give you the right answers, right? So that part is okay. That part. See, as long as they're not asking you to create a tool like ChatGPT, then you're fine, right? Yeah, exactly. So creating a no ChatGPT with the help of ChatGPT. Sure, yeah, correct. So now, as an example, right, even kids who are doing their homework these days, right? They were, what are the different sources of water or something? Just an example. Normally, you will try to do a Google and you'll try to do it. Same kind of a question. If you put in ChatGPT in a very methodical way, ChatGPT will give you the correct answer step by step and by the correct sentences also, right? So it makes your life easier in terms of creating the homework. So very on similar lines. So online team, Azarul was saying he came across a job description where they said you should know Power BI, Excel, and SQL, but you should also know how to use ChatGPT to assist you in using the tool, right? So I said that's perfectly fine because in ChatGPT it's about asking the right question; it will give you the right answer. So that's perfect. If you have used, you should say I know how to use ChatGPT. Yeah, but you cannot say I know how to create ChatGPT. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. All right, good. Yeah, good. So in today's class material, I will also be sharing this particular file. So I have the PDF which I walked you through. I have already given that here. Right? Then I will also be giving you this particular file, which is called the .bak file. Right now, this is a file which Analytics Labs has given to us. This is a SQL Server backup file, right, which we will use to create as a database in our system. So I will open SQL Server Management Studio. And why are we doing this? Because in order to create the visualizations, I want to get data from different tables. Now, if you remember, actually, I will open this SSMS and I'll show you. I hope all of you still remember what SSMS is, right? Because it's been about a week since the SQL class ended, and I don't want to say I forgot, right? Okay, right. So we will connect to the SQL Server Management Studio, and this is my laptop, right? Now, if you remember, in class for our batch, we kept using 21st May, right? So we used 21st, yeah. So we said create database, and then we started creating multiple tables here, if you remember, right? And then within the tables, once we created the table, we then said insert, and we inserted the data. Right? So to explain any topic or any syntax, I used to sometimes create the required data set, right? When I say create a data set, create the table, insert data into it, and then I was using the select statement to retrieve the data, right? So similarly, to explain the Power BI curriculum, I will also need data, right? Now, in Power BI, as I mentioned, you can connect to different data sources, and SQL Server database is one of the data sources. And most often in your workplace, you will anyway end up connecting to some database within the corporate environment. Right? So that's why we are trying to see how to connect to this. Right? And once you have the SQL Server open, I will say right click on the database. I will say restore database. Okay. Then I will get a pop-up. No backup selected. Correct. That's true. So I will have to say I have to select the right parameters here. Right? Now source, where is the source? It is in a particular location, and I will click on device and I will go to browse. In browse, I will then say I get the select backup device option. Here it says specify the backup media and its location for your restore operation. Now restore is nothing but the copy is there. I want to bring the entire database into my PC. Right? So in order to do that, because they have given this backup copy to me, I am trying to bring that in. So over here, I will say it is the backup media. I will say add. Now in add, I have to point to the location where this backup file exists. Now backup file is somewhere here, at least in my PC. So in your PC, you will have to select the folder where you have stored it, right? So here I'll do this and I'll say Control C. And then in the backup file location, I'll do a Control V and I'll say it is here. So it is now pointing to this folder, right? Because in this folder, I have this file. Now, when I do that, as you can see, it is showing that in this folder, there is a backup file here. Right? So I will click on this file name. I'll say OK. Then I'll say OK. Yeah. And then it says what is the destination where this should be created. That is the name of the database. If you just here, it will create that database and it will create all the tables and the data. It will put all the data inside it. Right? So what I will do is I will give a name similar to, I will create a name like I will give a name which will say I will give this name Adventure Works DW 2020 _ 21st May 2023 batch. Right. So I will copy this. I will come back here. And in the name of the database, whatever is there, I will select and then I will delete that. I'll say Control V. So what this will do is it will restore or it will put all the data from that backup file into this new database that it will create. Okay. If you see currently, there is no database with this name. There is no database with this name, but there is something with _del, right? But this does not exist. Okay. So I will say, okay, here. Right. It says so and so restored successfully. So I'll say, okay. And then when I refresh, you will observe that it created a database, AdventureWorks, with the same name. Right? This name, you have it. AdventureWorks TW so 21st May. Yeah. Okay. Everyone with me till here? Okay. Now, if you see this, if you do a plus here, you will observe that there are so many tables here. Right? So, because creating these many tables and the relationships and inserting data would have been very cumbersome if they would have just given us the SQL code. That is the reason they give a file where all this information was there. And within SQL, you have the option to say restore the database. So we then did that. Okay. So now we have a new database with this name, and this database has multiple tables here. Okay. So we will use some of the tables from this in such a way that we will connect Power BI to some of these tables and we will retrieve data from these tables. Okay. Everyone with me till here? Okay. All right. Online team, quick check. I hope everyone followed how to restore the database. Okay. Yeah. And it is anyway recorded. So if you want to restore the database in your PC, you just play the video again and do the exact same steps.
So is it different from that which you taught in last class, import and export data?
Yeah, so there in the import export data, I had only brought in the data from a CSV kind of a file. That's correct, right? So there we had just brought one table or so, right? So in this case, what we did, we brought in the entire database along with the tables, along with the relationships, along with the data inside it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and usually, to be candid, you will also not have authorization to do the restore database option at work. Okay, this restore database thing will be done by the database, either a database admin or a SQL developer in the office. If there is something that needs to be done, we will only be told about this database name. We will then be told that we have given you access to these many tables, and then you can connect using Power BI. Does that help? Okay, I'll take it as a yes. Any other questions, team? Okay. All right, team. Cool. Right. So this is a very critical aspect, and the only thing that we have done is I have created the database, and I have put in the required tables along with the data inside. Okay, so that we will then create the required visualization. Okay, good. All right. Now, in order to explain the concept in a very simple manner, let me show you. I have a, let's look at the same data. If you see here, please to share this. Yeah. So I will anyway share this file for your reference. If you remember, this is one of the tables we created in the SQL class. And let us say if you had this table in SQL or in SQL Server, and if you wanted to put the data from this table into Excel, how would you do it? Yeah, no, I'm saying if the table is already inside, if this table is inside a SQL Server database, there was an option which I showed. Perfect, right? As Himanshi said. Thank you, Himanshi. So what I would have done is I would have said new query here, right? And then I can say, yeah, okay. So if you want to do the export thing, yeah, that can also be done. Yeah, that's fine. But in the SQL class, what we had done select star from this table, and whatever output came, we then sorry, let me just show it to you. So once I got this output, we then click this area, right click, copy with headers, and then if I wanted to put it in Excel, I would have done it. So I have done exactly the same, just to explain to you. Okay, and you don't have to create this for Power BI. This is a simple example for me to explain, but I would rather have you connect to the main database which we just created. Okay, so you can just observe what I'm doing here, right? So if you see here, this database for Power BI, I have only one table, and I have data which has 22 rows here, correct? So we are good till here. Now, if I want to import data, or if I want to create some visualization in Power BI based on the data that I have in SQL Server, right? How would I do that? I would then say I will double click on Power BI. And then when you do this, it says get data, right? The very first thing you will have to anyway do is you will click on data source and say, or you will open a particular file that you already created, right? So in my case, because we are starting out from scratch, I will say get data. It will open the window. It says, where do you want to get the data from? Okay. I will say, these are the different, if you observe, there are so many different data sources to which you can connect Power BI to. Okay, is the concept of connecting Power BI clear? Yeah, so we will connect to SQL Server database. Why am I doing that? Because I have this table called for Power BI, this database, has a table called TBL order. Inside this, I have this 22 rows, and I want to bring data from this table. Right? That is why I'll say SQL Server, and then I will have to give the name of the database along with the name of the server. Okay, so I will say SQL Server database. I'll say connect. Is AC working? Yes. It's not too cold for you guys, right? Thank you. So I will give the name of the server. Now in your case, you will open your laptop and you will have the server name of your laptop. You will right click, you will say properties. This is the name of your laptop. Copy whatever you have, Control C. I will give the server name. Then I also know the name of the database. My database name is Power BI. Right? Sorry, for Power BI. So I'll say rename, Control C. Now here, what you will observe is there are two options. One is import and the other is direct query. Right? I will anyway walk you through both the options. Actually, a good time to probably walk you through before I do that. So I've given you the Microsoft link, which gives you the distinction between the direct option and the import. Okay. So when you select the import option over here, import will create a copy of the data from the selected tables, and it will bring it to your Power BI file. Right? But let us say you will save this file, and the next day when you open the file, it will still have a copy of the data that you imported yesterday. Okay, but if there was new data that was added to the data source that you have, one more data was added in this version of import, it will not have that data of that one day. Instead, if you had selected direct query, it will create a connection to the data source, and whenever new data is added there, it will be updated in your dashboard. Right? So you may want to read at a later point. Again, not at this point. What the admin team will do, they will create something called auto refresh. There is an option called auto refresh. Right? So that is more of an admin task. They will keep updating the data in that data flow, and then the dash to that data source, and then the data flows in. So that normally happens in 24 hours or something. It means every time there is additional row added, it will show in the data extracted. So let me read your question, which means every time there is additional row added. Yeah. So when we say data extracted, right? So whenever there is new data that comes into the data source, if you have selected the direct query, it will bring that new data into your Power BI. That's correct. That's right. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, what I would encourage you to do is you should read this article, which I will anyway share. As you are aware, right? When you connect something directly to the data source, one of the biggest challenges that you will have is the performance issue. Right? If your data source is extremely large, and every time you are trying to create a particular visualization, and if it is trying to hit the database and fetch the data, then there could be a lag in the visualization that you're trying to do. Right? So it's more of a trade-off, and in the office setup, the admin will then work with you to see, okay, is it important to have a import or a direct query, or how do we go about that? Right? And there is also a concept, so maybe you can read about it. It's called creating data flows and data sets. Right? So what the admins will do, they will create data flow where data comes from the source and it is updated there. They will do an auto refresh. They will have a frequency of every 6 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours, and then the Power BI, they will do a direct query or an import from that particular data set, and then so that the data, the dashboard that you have is correct. Right? So it would predominantly be a direct query to that data source. Right? Again, just more of an FYI, but at this stage, all you really need to know is import is a copy of the data, and direct is a direct connect to the data source. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I will anyway share this thing, but I will show you both the examples here. Right? So if I say import, and if I say import this thing, and I say okay, Live, correct. Direct query is a live connection to the data source. Correct. Here, the moment I did this, it shows that in this database, there is only one table here. So I will select the table and then it says preview of the data set. So it has all this info. It is exactly the same as what you have here. Right? The same data is being displayed here. Oops, sorry, over here. So we say okay, and we'll say load. So when you load that information, what actually happens is it brings in the data from the data source into your Power BI file. So as you can see, it says 22 rows loaded. Okay. We will anyway speak about it, but if you remember, we spoke about the canvas, right? So this is the canvas where you will build your visual, right? And in this, you will keep bringing in various tiles, and you will build your report or dashboard. And this is nothing but your report view. Okay. Then second, this is your data view. Now, if I want to know what is there in this table, if I click on this, this will show the data that exists inside the table that you have brought. Right? And then this is your data modeling view, which you can use to create the relationships. Right? So in this case, if you have multiple tables, then you can then manage the relationships. Right? So if you want to see your visualization, it will be in the report view. Data, what is there inside a table here, and then if you want to manage your relationships and see or tweak the model relationship, you will come here. So we will use this all three during the course, right? But for now, I'll just stick to this, and we see that we were able to bring this entire data into it. Right? So all the 22 rows we have it here. Okay, it shows 22 rows. So for now, I will save this. I'll say file, save as, and I will say example. I will say import example. I'll just leave it in it. Right? Import example. And where do I want to share it? It should be here. Again, there is a though I'm sharing it, it will not probably open because it will try to link to the source that I had tried to point to right now, right? But in the Office setup, the point happens to a central repository. So no matter who tries to open, they will have access to that repository. Okay. But anyway, I'm still giving it as an yes. Yeah. Right? So there's an example of how you would import the data. Right? Now, if I close this and then say, let us say I open another Power BI file. Say get data. I'll say connect to the SQL Server. Connect. The name of the server was this time. Instead of import, I'll say direct. Okay? So even if I say direct and I say okay, show the table that I'm pointing to. This is the data, and then I'll say load. Okay, and then if I come back here, I will have the view here. And when you have the data, the table that is loaded, you will have all the fields here. And when you're trying to do the direct thing, it does not show you the data model because it will be a very large data set. Right? So in such cases, what we do is we will build the visual, we will bring the fields, and I will anyway give you an example of that in a bit. So if I were to, so for example, in this case, actually I will show it in the import thing, right? Rather than this, but we will anyway see how to build the different visuals. So in but just to give you a feel of the numbers, I want to actually open both. So let me actually do it here. I will, don't worry about this table thing. I will explain this when we create the visualization. I will say I want the reference number, for example. Okay. I want the, let us say name of the category and the sales value. Right. So I have, if you see here, the total is 90775, right? And if I were to probably check for this 90775. So we have all the data that we had brought in. Now let me save this for a second. Save as, and I will say import example. I will say direct query. So I would say when you are working, you should create the same thing on your PC, right? You can go through the video and create it. So I will close this. Let me try to open the import example. Yes, let me again create the same table. Let me say I will bring the same reference number and have the category, and I will have the sales. So the same 90775, the same as what I have. Okay. So the data, as you saw in either the import or the direct, we have the exact same data, but it was just a means of how we get the data. Okay. Are we good till here? Yeah. Okay. So I will anyway save this also because I've already given a name and I'm saving it here. Okay. Online tip, just in a quick check. I hope we are good till here, right?
Sir, here also we have the option of count as well.
We have the, yeah, so we will do all that when we bring that into the view. Yes, we can. I will give you examples of that. Yes. So over here, if you see here, यहाँ पे sum of sales hai, you can change it to count, distinct count, anything that you want. You can do all that here.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Very similar to your pivot table. Okay. So yeah, so good. So we saw the import thing. Now we went through the PDF and then we said that, once we are getting the data, if you was it dispatch, if you have a large set of data, you want to restrict the type of data that you are bringing into your Power BI file. If you have a data for 10 years, you may not want the data for all the 10 years. Okay? You may just want to bring in for 3 years, or when you're bringing the data, you only want to bring the summarized data, but not the entire data. Okay? So I will show you how we do it in in SQL, right? Versus how we do it in Power BI. So over here, let us say, can someone tell me in SQL, I would like to display the information that I have displayed here in the pivot table. I want to create this exact same kind of output in SQL by writing the SQL code. What would be the SQL code for it?
Category is equals to furniture.
Select
Yeah.
category, comma,
Category.
good. I will say sum of sales, right, as something like total or total sales, right? Total sales. Then from TBL, correct? And very good.
Where condition?
Yeah, so in this case, I will not use the where, Shweta, because I am not restricting anything. I am good with everything that we have, all the categories, correct? But if you are restricting, you are absolutely right. We would have used a where. Okay? So here we are only grouping it. So I will say group by, and what comes, whatever is not there in the aggregated, correct? Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect answer, team. Good job. So we will do this. So now I get this summary furniture 14778, office supplies 345 something, and then technology 41. Technology 40. Okay. In this, you can do it in Power BI. We can display that. I will show that. Yes. Not in this out. I don't think you can. I will check. Usually we don't do that, but I will check. You just remind me. I'll make a note of it. Thanks. Perfect. Right. So the point that I was trying to drive home here is either if I do this, I get all 22 rows. But if my objective is I don't care about customer name, I don't care about the order date, but what I really want to show in my data set is only the summarized information, I will use this directly in some graph at a later point. So if that is the case, the way you are able to write this SQL query, observe that I can Open up Power BI. I'm just waiting for it to load. And then I'll say SQL Server connect. Sorry. Yeah, so actually what happens in the office setup, they would have already created that connection. It will not give you this pop. Right? So database here, I am doing it because I don't have any predefined connection. And they may give you, and if you're working with multiple servers, then you have to do this. Hi, Amity. Sorry, because of the power fluctuation, it kicked me out of Zoom as well. So I had to log back in. Team, do let me know if you are able to view my screen. Okay, thanks, team. Thank you. Alrighty, so let me resume the recording again. Okay. Oh, I thought I had no record. Okay, good, right? So I set open and I think it resumed now, right? Let me check, Sudha. Yeah, it has resumed now because it gives me the option to pause. But yeah, thanks, Sudha. Perfect, right? So I said this server, this thing. However, observe that this time, instead of just directly selecting one of the two, I will leave it as import. We anyway know that import or direct, we will get the same 22 rows from that table. Okay. But what I want to do is I don't want all the 22 rows. I was interested only in these 3 rows. I just wanted the summarized output to be fed into in a Power BI. So if that is the case, then what I can do is the same SQL that I would have written in SQL, I can write the same SQL here also. Right? So I can say select So if I do this, and if I say okay, oh, group by, oh, sorry. I made the mistake. And yeah, so it says we encountered and it cannot, as you saw, right? So thanks. By mistake, I wrote group by, and I say okay. Okay. So you can subset the data or filter the data that you want, and only then you can bring it, right? And in the example that I was trying to give, if you have 10 years of data in the SQL query that I was trying to write, the way Shweta had mentioned, if I could have said select so and so from something where, and then if I had a time period, I could give a time period, or only for category technology, right? So you can subset the data and you can bring it, right? So just wanted to highlight that also, that you can write the required SQL query inside the code to restrict the data that you want. And we do it quite often at work. Okay, is this concept clear? Yeah, okay. So online team, I hope you also followed it, and I will save this as an example. Wait. And because I wrote the query from my laptop and it's pointed to this file also may not open on your PC, because the query is bringing from my laptop, right? So even if you open the Power BI file, it will not open. Okay, good. But at least the concept was, the point was, I explained the concept. Right? So we saw what is import versus direct. We also saw what is how to import the data using SQL, right? And yeah, and I spoke about when we use the import directly, we were able to bring everything. But when we wrote the SQL query, we were able to filter the data as we wanted. Okay, cool. So I think from a high level perspective, I quickly wanted to walk you through how to download Power BI and then how to create the data set using the restore database on your local PC, and explain the concept of opening the Power BI desktop file and retrieving data either using import or direct, and also by restricting the data by using SQL. Right? So next what we will do is we will open Power BI and we will go into the different tasks that we want to do. Okay, so let me save that file. And if before I do that, and I don't want to give a interval break, I'll give you a very short 8-minute break, and after that we will directly complete till the end. Okay, so we're at 4:02. We come back at 4:10 and continue. Okay, thanks. Cool, good. So before I proceed any further, right? So very Power BI is also very similar to Tableau, where it's a lot of small things, right? So you may not remember everything, right? And it's absolutely okay. Keep playing the videos and keep seeing what's happening, right? But so far, all that we have done, we just saw the entire overview of what is Power BI, what are the key elements of it, and then we saw how to install Power BI. We saw how to open Power BI. We learned how to, most importantly, for this curriculum, for our class, you will need a data set. So we saw how to restore a database, right, onto your local PC, because that becomes your data set, right? So everything that we will be doing, it will be from this particular database, right? All the tables that will come will be from here, right? And we saw the option of import and direct query, and within that also we saw how to write a SQL query to restrict the data. Okay, good, perfect. So now what we will do is we will you can even copy paste the code. Yes, ये जो SQL में लिखा है आपने, the same thing you could have वो Power BI. You could have, if you paste it, you will get the exact same output. Absolutely, yes, yes. Right. Good. Okay, so I will close this for now, right? And yeah. Perfect. So now we will for the exercises, you will observe that we have so many tables in this database, but for our exercise, I will not need so many tables. I will only need a couple of tables, right? So what I have anyway done is to make life easy for you as well. I will share this notepad also. Well, I may or may not share the notepad, but at least in the class, I'm going to use it. You can always view the, yeah, I'll take a call, right? Because to be honest, some of the things here may not be very accurate. That's why I'm very hesitant. I would say that even if I share the notepad, it is only as a guide. Don't follow it completely. I would say go through the video or whatever I'm doing in class. That is the correct. Okay, that's all. Because it's all done in bits and pieces from here and there. Right? So okay. So now the first thing that we saw was we saw how to import. We will see how to import the data from this particular database, right? And we saw how to import data in Power BI, but we had seen the example of for Power BI table. We imported the data from this one. Right? This time we will see how to import the data from this database. Right? So I will open up Power BI. So I will say Power BI get data. And while that is opening, I will want the I will say SQL Server database. I'll say connect server, and this time I will give the database table, the database which we just created. Okay, so I will copy the name. I will paste it here. Right? I will just leave it as import itself. I will not do anything. When I say okay, it will show that there are multiple tables, and it will give us the option to select which tables do we want to bring into Power BI. Okay, so I will bring in. Sorry. It is difficult if there are a lot of tables. Sure, but but honestly, in a work setup, a database will have a lot of tables. That's correct, and that is exactly why you will first need to work with your customer to discuss which tables have the relevant data for the analysis, and only then will you bring in those tables. There is no point in bringing other tables. Okay, so I will explain the different data things in a bit, right? But dim employee, I will explain what these are. But to be honest, I think if you remember the SQL class, I would have spoken about the star schema. Star schema is nothing but so you will have the main table, the fact table, and then you will have all the dimension tables, right? So example of a dimension table is your employee table, right? Customer table, right? And then but the main table, which is your fact table, will be something like a sales information, where it will have connection to all the different tables. I will show you in a bit. I have exported the data in Excel and I'll show it to you, right? So for now, I will say dim employee. Right? This is one of the tables that I want. Dim employee sales territory, dim employee sales territory. And in a bit, I will show you exactly why each of these tables are required. Okay, so bear with me. Dim product, and then dim reseller, dim sales territory, and then fact reseller. Right? So if you see, fact reseller, the name itself is table. This is a fact table. These are all dimension tables, right? So you will see the relationship anyway. So fact reseller sales, Okay, so we have selected all these tables. Okay, right? And then every time you select a table, it shows the data inside that table. Okay, so every time it has been showing, and then I'll say load. So if you see, the moment it loaded the details, it is showing you the table names to the right here. Right? So in the report view itself, you now have this. And later, when we create the visualization, you will observe that I will select the type of chart or graph or table that I want, and I will use the table and I will use the fields within this to bring it into the view. Very similar to what you would do in a pivot table. Right? So we will see that in the subsequent class. Right? So we were able to import, and as you saw, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 6 tables we have in the broad table. Okay. For now, what I will do, I will save this file. Okay, I'll say file, save as. Okay, I will give it a sales analysis. Okay, sales analysis, and where do I want to store? Let me take a call. I started this one, so I will save it for now. Let me not confuse you. I have to keep it in the same folder, so I will keep it in 8 July to share. And yeah, I will keep it in this folder. It's easier. Let me write one. It is a Power BI file, so I will save this here. Okay, perfect. So I have saved the file. Then let me take some time to explain what each of these tables are. Okay, so what I have done in SQL, I said, and you don't have to do this at all. Okay, I'm just doing it to explain it. I have done use and okay, then I said select star from dim employee, and I have brought all the data, 296 rows. Okay, so you can, I mean, if you want, you can also extract and create an Excel file like that, right? But okay, so for a second, if you see, well, the way I brought the data, it's jumbled, but let me check if I am able to copy with header. If I have something else. So if you observe, right, many times when you're trying to bring the data, it will not paste in the Excel correctly based on the data set. Okay, so this is one of the drawbacks of trying to bring the output into an Excel. In such cases, you will have to work with your development team and speak about the specific fields where you are having an issue, and they will either try to rectify that or try to create a different table. So in my case, I'm not able to do it, but because I just wanted to give you an example, let us assume that the data set was right, and well, technically the data set is still right. And in this, I have an employee number 276. I think. Let me check. If I say Control Z, okay. So before that, let me go to this. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned in the SQL class, we spoke about star schema, right? Star schema is nothing but there will be a main table which will have all the transaction information, and it will have satellite tables which will be connected to it. Right? So in this case, fact table or the main table is your fact reseller sales. What does it have? It has sales order number, the sales line number, order date, due date, ship date. It has the product key. It has the reseller key, right? So if you think from a business perspective, if I were to explain it, this is a particular order, right? It was ordered on this date. It is due to be delivered on this date, right? But it was actually shipped on this particular date, right? What was the product? Instead of giving the product name, they have just given the product key, right? This product was sold, but what was the product? It was a product with the product key 349. Now, what is 349? If you then look at the dim product, it gives you details of the particular each product key. So 349 is nothing but a mountain bike, right? So and then it tells the details of the product and the color and all the other aspects. Right? But the key point that I'm trying to drive is in this order. What is the product? The product is 349. What is 349? Details of it is here. Okay, so this is your dimension table. Continuing further, who was it sold by? It was sold by a reseller with the key number or reseller ID 676. Who is 676? If you come to dim reseller, 676 is, this is the name of the reseller. The name of the reseller is Better Bike Shop. He was the one, he or she was the one who sold it. Right? And these are the further details of this reseller. Okay. Then promotion key. So was there some kind of a promotion given? Yes. So again, if you observe, this probably refers to some of the other tables that we have. But in my case, I don't want to speak. I don't have anything to do with the promotion details. So I'm not going into that. Right. So I will skip to this and I will say employee key. So who was the employee who sold it? Right. So it was an employee whose ID is 285. Now who is 285? If you come to dim employee, 285 is nothing but Sui writer, right? So this is the employee who sold it, and these are all the details of that employee, right? And then continuing further, which sales territory does this employee belong to? This employee belongs to a sales territory 5. Now what is that? If I go to dim sales territory 5, again 5 is dim sales territory, right? Again, this is the table which is sort of bringing in a lot of junk data, or it's not junk data, it is a way where Excel cannot accommodate the data. That's how it put, right? So it gives more information about this particular sales data, right? So far, what did we see? I was just trying to explain to you what each of the tables has, right? So this table that we imported, factory seller, has all the sales related information, right? So this particular thing. Then the employee table, dim employee, has detail of who was that employee, right? Then dim employee sales territory. Which territory does the dim employee or this particular employee belong to? So if you see here, this employee 285 employee key, if I were to say 285, this employee belongs to a sales territory which is 5. In 5 could be south, north, east, west. So there could be another table, right? So this is how data is really structured inside the database table. There will be one or the other table which is linked to the other. Okay. So let me take out the filter here. Okay. Perfect. Right? So we saw the dim employee. Then we saw the product. Then we that we have imported into our Power BI file here. Let me come back here. Online team, I saw a message saying internet is unstable. Can you please confirm if you are able to hear me well? Okay, all right, thanks. Right. So I just explained what the relationship is between each of the tables. Is this clear to all? I mean, does anyone want me to explain anything about each of these tables? Right? I'll just pause before I continue. Okay, fair enough, right? So I was just trying to give you a little more business background on the data set that we have, right? And same for you happens whenever you are working, you have to, if you do not understand what the business ask is, you will not be able to justify the work, right? And again, because I'm not calling out any name, in the past, I have had to let go of an employee because that employee was absolutely not able to understand any of the business aspects of the work that he was doing. Right? He was good at what he was doing, but every time if that person had to be told, you need to look, I mean, you cannot spoon feed everything to the employee, right? So with time, you can be good at your technical thing, but you have to learn the business aspect of it, right? So that's why I was trying to explain the business aspect of it. And when you have a data problem, you have to look through the data, try to see what do you understand. You have to set up time with your customer or the stakeholder or your manager or your team lead and try to say, hey, this is what I think the data is signifying. can we have a quick discussion regarding what the requirement is, to walk you through what my understanding is, so that we can fill in the gaps if there is anything amiss here. Right? So you should always try to understand the business aspect of what the data is telling. Okay. Good. Right. So again, I honestly don't know what is written here, but I just explained to you in my own words as to what this table has. Okay. Good. All right. So now that we have imported the data, right, and saved the data, let me show you a few anomalies in the data which you should observe. Right? And the powerful tools within Power BI which help you to try and analyze the data. Right? So if I go to the right, so over here, when I am in this view, this is the view where I have the report, where I have the data, and I have the model. Right? Then second is, if you remember in the PPT, we said that first you will connect to the data sources, and then second step, it said you will do various transformations. Okay, so transformation is nothing but any missing value treatment or any kind of data change that you need to do, you will do it there. Right? So when I click on data, transform data, and I say transform data here, it opens up a Power Query editor. Okay. Now this particular window, for those of you, in simple terms, think of this as a ETL tool, right? What is ETL? ETL is extract, transform, and load. There are various kinds of ETL tools, but within Power BI, Power Query is an ETL tool which you will use to extract the data. The extracted data you will try to transform it, right? So it's just called as an ETL tool, right? And in this, you will be able to see more information about the data that you have fetched, and you will be able to change the properties of it. Right? So for example, when you click on, by default, I'm currently on the DIM employee, it shows that these are the different fields. Now it also shows these are the different data types. It also shows that you can do many things in this view, right? So I can say, for example, select the kind of columns that I want in the table that is, visible in the report view. I can, so as I had showed in the, or as I had mentioned in the SQL class also, instead of saying select star from a table, if that table has 100 columns, and if your work is only from 10 columns, there is no point bringing all the 100 columns, right? You may just want to say select and name of each column separated by a comma from table. If you do, then you are bringing in only the data that you want. Similarly, you can do similar actions of subsetting the data in this Power Query editor. Okay. So for example, if you see the DIM employee table, let me check which column it was. DIM employee, there is a, okay, right? So what do we have in this table? So this table has the employee key, okay? The parent employee key, okay? Then employee national ID alternate key. Again, some info, I'm not very sure what that is. Okay, so this is important. First name, last name, middle name, okay. It has name, title, hire date, birth date, login, email, phone, marital status, emergency contact, is he or she salaried or not, gender, right? So there are many such things, right? And what we will see in the Power BI class, we will see how to restrict the kind of data that we want to bring in, and you could do exactly the same in Tableau also, right? We don't bring all the columns, we bring in only the columns that we want for our work. Okay, so if you see here, position, okay, so there's a field called position. Yeah, so if you see here, when I come to view and I say position, and when I say column quality, right, what you observe here is it says valid 6%, empty 94%, right? So ideally speaking, for each employee, it is talking about that employee's designation, right? So if I do a drop down here, you will see that an employee is either a sales director or a sales manager, a sales representative, or none. There are almost 94% of the rows where there is no designation at all. Okay? So it helps you to, so when you do this, right, this particular aspect of column quality, it gives you a feel about the kind of data that you have in your data set. Right? So in this column, so when this is the case, if they say that, hey, you need to create a report by the designations of the employee, right? If that is the case, you will then try to see the identify the column which has that information, right? You may have a discussion with your manager or customer or whoever it is, right? After that, you will narrow down on this column. And then if you want to learn more about it, if you select view and then say column quality, if you see such a large gap, you should then talk to the customer and say, hey, but the data has a lot of gap. What am I supposed to do with a column which says null? Okay? Then they may say that I'll resend the data or replace it with XYZ. Right? So they'll try to give you that information. Right? So we know that there are gaps in this column if you are trying to do some analysis. Then second is there is a useful feature called column distribution. So inspect employee key. Okay, so let us look at employee key. Employee key. Take a look at employee key. Right? If I say column distribution, now what you will observe here is it says 296 distinct and 296 unique. This is a very Power BI specific metric. Okay, now let me explain this. Right? It says there are 296 distinct also, and there are 296 unique also. Right? So usually what happens, unique, if you have same number of distinct and unique, technically this is a candidate for a primary key. Right? So in a primary key, every value has to be different in SQL, if you remember. And second is they should not be null. Right? Of course, I cannot distinguish if it's a null or not here, but at least it is in a unique over here. So let me try to explain what distinct and unique means over here. Right? So I will anyway unselect this here. So if you see if I have 4 names here, which says Tim, Jane, Jim, and Tim. Okay. Here, if I say I want distinct values from these 4, the output will be Tim, Jane, and Jim. That is, duplicate values are removed. Right? However, if we say unique in a values, Tim is being repeated somewhere else, hence Tim is not unique. But Jane and Jim are not repeated anywhere, hence Jane and Jim are unique. Right? But if distinct and unique are the same, then that is almost like a primary key. Okay, so just wanted to give you a walkthrough of that. Okay, again, do you have to know what is unique or distinct? No, it really depends on the analysis that you're trying to do. Right? Okay, perfect. Then the next example. Yeah, column profiler in employee key, and okay, again in the employee key table itself. Let me check employee key. The column name is employee key. Oh, okay, team employee sales data. Okay, team employee sales data. Employee key. If I say column profile, right? What you observe here is it is trying to, if you see the column statistics over here, it says totally there are 39, out of which there are 18 distinct and there are 11 unique. Right? So to help you understand this, what I have done, I have if you see here, this thing, if you see the dim employee sales filtering, if you would write a select star from that table and get the data and put it into Excel, and then if you were to create a pivot table out of the data, first of all, how many rows do we have? 39. Right? So that is what it says here. If you see here, totally there are 39 rows. Right? Out of this, it says now when I create a pivot table out of it, out of this data set, and when I bring pivot key in the row and count of employee key in the values, what this shows is for 277 it shows 10. What this means is 277 occurs 10 times. Okay, and I have done the same thing and I have done the descending sort. So if you see total is 39, and what I wanted to observe is it says there are these many keys which occur only once. Okay? So if I see from here, I have count is 11. So here if you see unique is 11, right? And then distinct is 18. So distinct, if I see the count of all these guys from here till here, distinct is 8. Okay, so this is unique versus distinct, and you can see the same thing in the column in a profile as well. And why am I showing this to you? So that as and when you are working on any particular data set, these options can come in handy to investigate further. Okay, then inspect business type column in dim reseller. So if I go to dim reseller, business type column, if I go to column profile, okay. Now you tell me This column, this you can ignore, right? I want you to take a look at this visual, and without me telling you, from a business perspective, do you have any comment? You can take a minute or two, that's fine. But I want you to observe and tell me if you observe anything here.
Based on the vendor, they're describing the sales.
Based on the vendor. So when you say vendor,
Yeah.
you're talking about the business type, is it?
Yeah, business type.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Okay. Let me try to give specific clue that I'm looking for. Where a business type? Yeah. Yeah. So warehouse business type has very few resellers. Perfect. That is also very good observation. Now the clue that I will give is, do you look for the business type, the different options within business type, and look at the warehouse, right? Is there anything you would call out between these two?
Yeah, there's this gap space between these two, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly what I was looking for, right? So,
Okay.
So this is actually a typo or a error, entry error, where the analyst intended to write warehouse, but the analyst has written where space house. Okay. So that's why for this you have very few, right? But here this is the chunk of it. So ideally there are only 3 business types. One is value-added reseller, specialty business, specialty bike shop, and warehouse. Okay? So somebody has inadvertently written a space and a capital. Okay? So we will, in the later class, we will see how to clean this type of data. Right? So this is part of your Power Query exercise, right? And an example of the transformation that we'll do. Thanks, Steve. Very good observation, right? Then, from a business perspective, there is one more aspect, total product cost, right? So if you look at this name itself, which says total product cost, let me go to the factory seller. Let's go to factory seller sales, and let's go to total product cost, right? So just an example, right? Just to tell you, is it true that every order that I place, or every order that is placed, should have a value associated with it, the total value, correct? If that is true, observe the column total product cost, and right, observe the column statistics piece here. Do you observe anything here?
Most of the rows are empty.
Yeah, so there are 76 rows where there is no value at all for the total product cost, right? Correct answer, right? So if that is the case, how can, there cannot exist an order with 0 total cost, right? So there is something wrong in that data set, right? So from a business perspective, right, ideally what will happen is the total product cost is actually the cost of one product into the total number of products that were sold in that order. So if one order, for example, hypothetically, if it had one quantity, right, and the actual cost of that one product was 500 rupees, the total cost here should be 500. If the cost of this particular product, let us say, was 1000 rupees, and if there are 3 products that are ordered, the total product cost would be 300 into 1000. It should be 3000. Okay. So in this case, there is a data issue, and we will figure out in the later classes. We will write a code, or we'll write a formula where we will look for the order quantity. Then we will multiply it by the actual cost of the product for that order, and then it will populate the total product cost. Okay, so we will see that in tomorrow's class. Okay, so just wanted to bring this to your attention. Product quantity could also be empty. The order quantity could also be empty. Sure, that can also be there. Yeah, correct. So if you observe, and that's exactly what, if you see here, there are 0 empty here. यहाँ पे देखिए आप, 0 empty here, which means there is no issue with the order quantity field. So we are good with that. Yeah. So these checks you have to do. Final output when you're getting, then you say, okay, why am I getting a 0? Right? So you will try to investigate, and then you will try to do missing value table. Good. Perfect. All right, then. Okay, so I will, before I go to the next task, I will just pause here to check if everyone is clear, with the various things that we did in the last 50 minutes, right? All that we had done was for the table that we created in SQL Server, we opened a Power BI and we imported the data from this database. Okay? When we imported the data, we only brought in data for these 6 tables. Okay? And then I explained the relationship between each of the 6 tables here. Okay? And then, as I mentioned, even in the Excel class, our job as a data analyst is not just, though our job is to do data analysis, none of us will be fortunate to get clean data every time. Right? We will have to do some or the other kind of data manipulation or data cleaning. Right? So in order to do that, you will first have to check if there are any issues with your data set. Now, in this case, I knew that, okay, I did this, I checked for this, right? This is based on the question that I'm trying to answer, right? In your case, whatever question comes from your customer, for that, the very first thing you'll have to figure out, okay, to answer this question, where is the data? So they will have to tell you, okay, though we have this particular database, out of the 50 tables, data exists for this thing only in five tables. Then within the 5 tables, you will then try to ask for either a data dictionary, or they will give you a data dictionary, or you will try to go through each of those, and then you will say, okay, I believe these are the fields that I can probably use. So you have a discussion with your manager or team leader or customer that these are the things where I believe I have the data. Right? And then you then actually, for the specific problem, confirm if these are the fields that you can use. Once they say yes, then you try to check if there are any gaps in the data. Okay? So for example, gap in the data, as I said, there were a lot of nulls. Okay? So in that case, the warehouse had where space house. That is also another example of a gap. So you will then have to work on creating the correct data set or asking them for the correct data set. Okay? So till here, you'll have to be very clear on this, right? And I have learned over a period of time, you have to be very clear. Data dictionary is nothing but the relationship or information of each field in a table. So it will say a data dictionary example, it may say employee table. It will say employee key. What does employee key mean? There will be a description of that. Then parent employee key. What does the parent key employee key mean? It may say this is related to this using this information. Right? So that is an example of a data dictionary. Right? And I could be wrong, but I think in your integrated case study, they have actually given you a data dictionary, right? Which there are so many tables, they're trying to give you some information of how one table is related to the other. Okay, so that is a data dictionary. Okay, yeah, and yeah, so I was just trying to give you an overview of how you will determine what to check in the data. Okay, I know it's a lot of information, but are we good till here? Yeah, okay. I will actually do one thing. I will pause here for today. I will not continue. I only have 4 minutes. But in tomorrow's class, I will show you. Today, we saw how to bring data from SQL Server. Okay. Tomorrow, I will show you how to bring data from an Excel file, right? Excel or a CSV, whatever they have given me. I will check what I have. Yeah. So I have a CSV file, and be it CSV or Excel or something, it is another kind of a file. Right? So we will try to bring data from that. And then in the later classes, somewhere, we will try to join the data between these 2 tables based on the business data. Okay, perfect. All right, team. I will pause here for today. If anyone has a question, I will stay back. But I purposefully did not want to continue more because I know it was a lot of data to digest, and I want you to, try and remember as much as I can. So I've tried to do as many revisions as well, even in today's class as well. Okay, perfect. Yeah. At the end of the day, I will, whatever I have done till here and whatever I need to share, I will share that. Of course, some things which says like, something for the instructor or some very large files which I have created, I'm not sharing that, but I have showed you how you can create it on your own. Okay. But most of the things which are relevant, I will share it in the zip file. Okay? All right, team. Have a good rest of the day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Take care, team. Bye-bye. And online team, if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask. I will stay back or put your questions in chat. Otherwise, enjoy your Saturday evening. Take care. Thanks. I will be here for a couple of minutes. So how's Power BI? Interesting? Yeah, absolutely. वो तो मेरा job है, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of effort to try and explain in the most layman terms, right? That is important to tell. Correct. Absolutely. No problem. Good. Yeah. So I think now that you have an understanding of how to get the data, tomorrow we will bring data from